So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to fill in the 7 hexagons that we created up here with our 7 KPI cards that we created in the first Power BI light DAX exercise that we did earlier. So let's just go ahead and copy. I'm just literally holding down Control and clicking all of these, and then while still holding down Control, hitting C or Control C. And I'm just going to paste all of these onto the page. And you can see as I'm dragging these around right now, all of these visuals have their backgrounds turned on, which is going to cause me problems because you're not going to get to see those sweet, sweet multicolored hexagons in the background. So let's go ahead and head over to our formatting options for these cards. Let's go to General. I'm going to turn off header icons. I'm not going to need them. Let's turn off our backgrounds. Let's go to our visual settings. Let's go ahead and turn off our category labels, which, of course, the category labels are things like top earner, average order size. We're not going to need those because we already put the labels on the hexagons in PowerPoint so that we know what all these are. So we don't need our category labels. And because we're putting this text on these multicolored backgrounds, let's go ahead and choose white as our font. And let's start just kind of dragging things into position. I'm going to drag these down here real fast. Looks like I grabbed one of the wrong cards here. So I'm just going to grab the correct one. One thing that you can do is if you're in a huge hurry, let's just go ahead and grab this Davy Jones's Sustainably Grown Organic Hot Chocolate Large. Dang, I missed saying it. And let's go up here to our formatting paintbrush and let's grab the formatting from that card and apply it to this card. Now, let's go ahead and grab our total transactions here. Let's grab our total revenue. Let's grab our average order size, our number of stores, and our number of menu items. I'm just going to kind of drag those into place. And you'll notice that my fonts are so big here that this total number of purchases and total sales, they kind of run outside of the hexagon boundary. So let's drop the font size for all of these down to 35 or so. And now I'm just going to, kind of ballpark centering all of these visuals. You can also, make some of these cards a little bit smaller. I think that I made them gigantic when I built these. We definitely don't need that much card for the number 3. I'm just kind of dragging these into position. And now I've got these 2 fairly large, large string values that I need to somehow fit into these cards. So if you've got larger text values, no big deal. We're just going to allow ourselves to go a little bit smaller on the font sizes here. Let's try 20. I can still read Crow's Nest Croissant pretty easily. Having a little bit more trouble with the name of this ridiculous hot chocolate product that makes me want to never drink hot chocolate again because it's so long and absurd. Okay, there we go. All of our cards are looking pretty decent now. Let's go ahead and grab the rest of our summary visuals and let's go ahead and bring those over as well. Let's go ahead and grab those 3 bar charts. I'm just going to copy and paste those. The background here is a little bit less important because I'm overlaying these on top of another white background. But I'm just going to try to go ahead and get these staged in what seems to me like a reasonable amount of space. And again, I'm trying to make sure that all of my visuals are aligned and as much as possible sort of formatted the same way. So let's go ahead and grab these 2 charts up here. I'm going to go to my general settings. I'm going to turn off background, might as well since I'm here. Let's just go ahead and give these a very slight visual border so that they don't run into each other. Meaning that I don't want like the bars or the titles of these visuals to sort of run into the title of the other visual. I don't want somebody accidentally like reading these titles as one long thing. The adding the boundary just kind of helps me know where one visual ends and the other begins. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with our vertical bar chart down here. Going to add another just slight boundary to it. And while I'm here, I'm also going to make sure that my responsive setting is turned off for everything. I started having my suspicions that responsive may still be turned on for a few of these. There we go. That's looking pretty good. The next thing that I'm going to do is let's go ahead and start updating some of our formatting options, because remember right now I've just got this kind of gray color for all of these. So let's go ahead and grab our first bar chart here, and for my bars I'm going to add some conditional formatting, and let's see what this looks like if we go from sort of a dark teal to light teal to orange. We're kind of using the same gradient that we have in the background of the visual. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my legend. Ultimately, the reason that I organized my gradient that way is that people are really drawn in a lot of instances to these sort of warmer colors. Orange is a very bright and warm color that just automatically attracts the eye of most people who are looking at, a visual that they've never seen before. So I use orange as my accent color quite a bit, especially when sort of my surrounding colors are these sorts of, different shades of teal and blue. I'm going to do the exact same thing over here with my bars. I'm going to just go ahead and grab my gradient. I'm going to make sure that it is pointed at my total sales measure. And then I'm just going to pick the same gradient colors here, that sort of dark teal, teal, and orange. Power BI automatically creates this legend, which takes up a lot of space. Anybody from Microsoft, if you're listening, I'm not a huge fan of your automatic legend up here. I get why it's useful, but since I can't really do much with it, I tend to just get rid of it. There we go. I'm just adjusting my y-axis settings so that things aren't quite as cut off as they are. Next, I'm going to focus on this visual down here. And let's go ahead and turn off our x-axis title, and let's go ahead and turn off our y-axis title. And I'm going to go ahead while I'm here and make sure that all of my fonts are DIN again. I'm going to just increase everything as much as I can. Let's try 30 to see if my values here aren't cut off quite as much. That's looking pretty decent to me. And we can try using the same gradient, but let's see how this really looks. On the whole, this isn't looking too bad, but I'm kind of wondering if maybe I should show you yet another example of ranking so that we might be able to do something, even a little bit cooler with this chart. And so what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to do some impromptu DAX here just for this bar chart. And right now we're looking at product category and product type. So I'm actually going to go up here to my nested measures, and I'm going to create a new measure here. And I just went ahead and copied some DAX from my practice version of this. And we'll call this product category rank. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to take my product type from my product dim table. There we go. Now I've got my dim table. Let's go back and find our product type. And I'm going to rank all of the values in this product type field from my product dimension by total sales. But I'm also going to pass an additional bit of information to this new ranking, where I'm telling it to just rank the product types, which of course are these vertical values here, this biscotti, pastry, scone, clothing, housewares. I'm not going to read all of these. But the vertical items here, those are what make up my, my product types. These are just one step less granular than the actual specific names of the products. The least granular item that I have that describes my products is product category, which are the horizontal values down here. So I'm creating a ranking that ranks just these values, but ignores any of my product categories. And so let's go ahead and drag this into my tooltips so that as I hover over these, you can see how every single product here ranks. This orange you can see is my brightest value, so of course that's ranked first. One of these sort of green bars here should be second, I think this one, then third, then fourth. What if we wanted to just highlight the 10 best-selling product types? Well, now that we have this ranking measure, we can do that. So let's go ahead and create a new measure here. And we're going to call this our top 10 highlight. Well, actually, we'll be even more specific. We'll call it top 10 product type highlight. And here, I'm just going to use an if function. I've demonstrated switch a couple of times now, but let's give you some more if experience. And I'm going to find that product category rank. And I'm going to give Power BI instructions for how to color these bars. So what I want Power BI to do is if the product category rank is less than or equal to 10, in other words, it's one of the top 10 best-selling product categories, I want it to use my orange color. And make sure you put the little hashtag in here so that Power BI recognizes that it's a color. And if it isn't, I want to use this teal that I've been using in other places. Now I'm going to go back to my column colors, and for my conditional formatting, instead of using a gradient, I'm going to use a field value. And that's kind of a, I would say, maybe a misnomer here, because yes, we're looking for a value, but it's not really coming from a field, at least not directly. It's coming from the instructions in this top 10 product type measure that we just created. Now that measure is technically based on the product type field from our data set, but just letting you know, it might be a little bit confusing here because we're going to use this field value under format style, but we're going to point it not at a field, but at a measure. So here's our top 10 product type highlight. Now you'll notice that when I trigger that, the top 10 products are all spotlighted here in orange. And the reason that I thought that this might be interesting when I was building this is of our top 10 product types, notice that 5 of them are all coffee. Every single coffee product type is one of our top 10 bestsellers. Makes perfect sense, right? After all, Kraken Coffee is a coffee shop. Tea, 3 of our 4 different types of tea also make up some of our top 10 sellers. So we're going to go ahead and just give this a title that sort of explains why we thought that orange was worth calling out. So we'll call this, of our top 10 product types, 8 fall into the coffee and tea product categories. And if you even want to add a note, of our top 10 product types, highlighted in orange, 8 fall into the coffee and tea product categories. And we'll go ahead and italicize that while we're here. We're pretty much done here. We have our top 10 best-selling products by total sales. We have our top 10 best-selling products by total sales again. Might be a good idea to sort of mix this up a little bit since they both have the same title. We'll call this total sales, percent of sales by product category. And top 10 best-selling, best-selling products by total sales. I'm happy with that. I have no notes. Let's go ahead and just leave that as is. The last thing that we're going to do for this section here is let's go ahead and add another text box, and that's up here. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my background here. I'm just going to kind of drag this out. And let's give this section sort of a theme or title that explains, what we're looking at in these visuals here. So, which Kraken coffee products are driving revenue so far in 2023? I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of that. Let's choose DIN, and let's see how large we can get away with making this. 20 may be about as large as I can make it. 24, yeah, is going to flow onto a separate line, so no problem. Looks like 20 is the best I can do. I'm going to go ahead and choose this kind of dark gray font again, and I'm going to go ahead and bold driving revenue so that anybody who's looking at this knows what this section is about. And I'm going to make that orange just to sort of really drive that point home. And I'm just going to put that there. Overall, everything's looking pretty good. I think that now I'm ready to move on to the next section. Now for the next section, if you'll recall, I'm focusing on these time visuals that tell us, what time during the day do we tend to make the most money, and when during the week, and also at what time do we see the most business sort of flowing in. And of course, I'm going to need to update all of the formatting options. They've been thrown off by the new theme that I created, but we can do that in just a second. Because I'm intending these two visuals to kind of be read as a single visual, let's go ahead and head back to our infographic. I'm going to scroll down to the next section here, and let's go ahead and just copy our descriptive text box here first. And I'm going to go ahead and drop this right here under our tentacle. And this is going to say, at what time of day do our new Florida locations see the most revenue? And again, I'm going to try to fit all of this on one line. Might have to drop the word new. That's fine. Anybody who's looking at this by now knows that we're talking about our new Florida stores. Let's move this down just a little bit. And the part of this sentence that I'm going to pull attention to is at what time of day, since that's the by and large the focus, even though I know we're also talking about weekdays and when during the week. Really, this part of the visual is just kind of telling us at what time of the day do our Florida locations see the most revenue. Below this, I'm going to put a rounded corner rectangle. I kind of scroll and drag. I'm going to drop this into place here. Let's go to our shape options. I don't need my fill turned on. I do need my border turned on. Let's see what this looks like at 5%. I think I might even be able to get away with 3%. All I'm doing here is I'm adjusting the tightness of the rounded corners up here. And for my border color, let's just go with a very light gray again, identical to what we're using in our visuals up here. Now that I've got that, let's head back over here and grab two of our time visuals. Just going to grab both of them, and then I'm going to control, copy, and paste. My visuals are up here now. Let's go ahead and just kind of drop these in. Gonna have to tighten them up a little bit, scrunch them in. Let's go ahead and remove my background from this, because now that I have this, for better or worse, I am going to have to sort of retool everything so that I can get these visuals perfectly aligned. And because this is honestly the hardest part of doing a combination bar chart and matrix, I'm going to go ahead and focus on that part first. Let's go ahead and go to our visual options. Let's see if I can make my visuals just a little bit smaller. I think I've actually got a little bit room to increase my padding. However, I do think I'm going to need to go even smaller on my bars. You can see that I want my 20 perfectly aligned with this bar up here. So let's see what we can get away with if I adjust this to 8.5. Okay, that worked perfect, having 8.5 as my font size. I'm going to go ahead and drag this down here. Now I've got plenty of room up here for my bar chart. So let's just go ahead and drag this down. And ultimately, I want my bars to kind of perfectly align to these numbers here. That is looking pretty good, and honestly went much smoother than it did when I was practicing this visual. Now we're going to go down here, and we're going to start with our matrix because it's going to be the easiest to change the formatting on. I'm going to go to my values. Let's replace, you can see I still have a little bit of light gray bleeding in here. Let's replace our alternate background color with white. Let's go back to our cell elements. And for our total sales, I'm going to use the same color scheme that I've been using for my conditional formatting in my bar charts above. And you can see that I'm able to really pull, by using that orange and blue combination, I'm really able to pull attention to the fact that almost all of our business is happening here between, let's say, 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. For my font colors, I want to make sure that those receive the same adjustment. That's looking pretty good. Let's go up to our bar chart now. We're going to adjust the conditional formatting on our colors and on our columns in exactly the same way. So there we go. It's making exactly the same point here. For our line, you can see that some of my markers and my lines are being kind of lost in this orange color here. So let's open up our line options. Let's go to average order size. Let's change the colors here to our dark teal. That looks pretty good because the line doesn't actually intersect with any other instances of us using that dark teal. So that color is now much easier to spot. And let's make sure that we update our marker up here in our text to be orange. Let's do the same thing with our data label. Let's update our max AOS marker to be orange. Even going to make it a little bit larger while we're here. And if I wanted to get super nitpicky, let's go ahead and also head to our secondary y-axis. And let's make those colors a little bit larger as well. And let's make sure that they're also using DIN. That's looking pretty good. And I also want to give this a more descriptive title, because right now it's using the auto-generated title for the secondary y-axis that Power BI generates. This isn't very helpful and is honestly a little boring and long for this infographic. So let's just call this average order size over time. That way anybody can look at this and see that, as the day goes on, average order size is changing. If you even want to call this something like average order size by hour, wordsmith this. Do whatever you think makes the most sense. I don't want to prescribe too much what the best thing possible is to call either of your axes. I'm much more concerned about your colors being correct and about just making sure that both of your two time series visuals here are lined up just perfectly. Now that we've got that was pretty easy. Let's go ahead and change our attention to the final section down here, which is where we're going to stage the forecast visuals that we created over here. So let's go ahead and grab all of our forecast visuals, all three of these line charts and this big matrix. Let's go ahead and copy those. Let's go over to our infographic. And let's go ahead and paste those onto the page, and we're just going to drag these down bit by bit. And you can see we don't have a whole lot of space here to work with, right? Like we're going to have to, definitely make some changes and possibly even some sacrifices to fit this huge matrix into this space, while also having more than just this teensy-weensy little bit of room here for our forecast line charts, which are very cool and potentially very useful to someone who's looking at this information. So let's just go step by step here. First thing that we can do is we can definitely make this matrix more narrow by taking out some of the granularity of these numbers here. And like, for example, instead of showing somebody $27,314, maybe 27K is a perfectly valid number. Still allows somebody to know what the overall increase in monthly sales is for any of these locations, but it allows us to convey basically the same amount of information in a much smaller space. So let's go ahead and head to our row subtotals. Let's open up our values. I'm going to shrink these down to 11 first. And while I'm here, let's also, for our values here, let's go ahead and shrink these down. Next, let's go ahead and head down here. Sorry, I lost my place for a second. Let's go to the specific columns here. And let's change our display units to thousands. And now you can see that all of my totals here are being converted to thousands. And you can also see that just by doing that, how much space this has opened up for my line charts. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this down just a little bit more. Whoops, I think I accidentally adjusted the width of my May column header. I'm going to try to pull this down just a little bit more. Let's go to our grid settings next. Let's adjust the padding. We don't have as much padding as we did before, or as much room for padding as we did before, because this is a pretty big matrix. Now let's go ahead and turn off our background. I think I may have overdone it on the padding. I definitely need a little bit more space, but maybe not quite that much. Going back to grid, going back to border, let's see if we can get away with a 4, which I think that we can. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Next thing, let's go to our visual settings, and let's go all the way down to cell elements again. And all we're doing is we're doing the same trick that we pulled up here, but we're just adjusting our background colors again for the conditional formatting. So we're still using total sales as our measure. Let's go ahead and use dark teal, lighter teal, orange. And now, of course, we're going to have to go back through and update our font colors to be exactly the same so that we get this kind of effect. And again, if you're thinking, well, for this visual, Sean, I would really like for my users to be able to see some of those values, no problem whatsoever. Let's do that. Let's go to more colors. Instead of using our dark teal, let's just go down here a little bit below it and let's pick a slightly darker teal. Let's do the same thing for our brighter teal. Let's just click on an area slightly darker. And for our orange, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm just going to click down here just a little bit below it, hit OK, and now you can faintly make out what those values are. They're just very, very faint because, once again, we want these to kind of blend in. We want people to still be able to see the color as their primary indication that colors, that sales are really starting to heat up here in the warmer months. Now, let's go ahead and try to get all of our line charts into position. We don't have a whole lot of room to work with here, but I think we'll be able to pull this off. We might have to sacrifice some of our font sizes. One thing that I would also recommend is just go ahead and click on all 3 of these. Drives me nuts when the 3 visuals aren't the exact same height. Let's see what 250 looks like. Way too much. Let's try 220. That's probably getting closer. For our x-axis, let's go ahead and drop the month sizes down to 10.5. See how that works. For y-axis, 13 is definitely more than we need. Let's try 11. Already I'm starting to make up some ground here. I think we're going to have quite a bit of room here at the top, so let's go to our grid settings again. Let's see if 4.5 gets me to where I want to be. Might even try getting away with 5. Okay, I think this is going to be perfect. Because my ultimate goal here, and I also want to make sure that my backgrounds one more time are turned off. Ultimately, what I want is to change the titles of these so that the first forecast, we're just going to call this Full Year Projection Miami. Call the next one, and I'm sure you know already where I'm going with this, Full Year Projection Orlando. And we'll call the next one Full Year Projection Tampa. And you know what? I'm going to see if I can live dangerously and make these just a little bit smaller. Because these line charts are so close, I barely feel like I can breathe. Maybe I'm overreacting. Okay, on the whole, this is looking pretty good to me. One thing that I am going to do here is, since I have this line pointing to these orange dots here, let's go ahead and change our colors here. Let's see how this looks if I go with a darker green, orange for my forecast marker, and for my data labels. Let's go with orange on that as well. Maybe even a slightly darker orange. Okay, I think that that's going to have to do it for us. Now, let me go ahead and just copy my text box here one more time and kind of pull that down into position so that we can give our third section down here a title. We'll call this something like, based on current performance, what do we forecast for 2023? Even going to try for sales for 2023. We'll make that bold. Another reason that I love the DIN font, folks, if you're wondering, or if you're just like, Sean, I'm not sold on it, I love the fact that with DIN, because each character is spaced evenly, if I decide that I want, if I have a very limited amount of space here for my text and I decide that I want to bold something, I love that it doesn't push the rest of my font to the right. Like, notice that whether these characters are bold or not, all the other characters stay exactly where they are. I love that. That's a huge annoyance for me with some of the other fonts in Power BI. Is I'm trying to keep everything on one line and then I bold something and it pushes some of the text down to the other line and then I've got to like take out a word or something. Nobody has time for that. So everything here is looking pretty good. I'm going to keep just sort of adjusting some of my sizes here. But on the whole, pretty happy with how that looks. I think maybe it looked a little bit cleaner in my practice, but that's still, by and large, the effect that I'm going for. So at any point, if you want to go up here to View and say Fit to Page, you can at least back out and see how your infographic is looking so far. And I mean, overall, I think this is looking pretty good, pretty decent, considering that, honestly, doing these infographic walkthroughs is much more difficult than just doing a standard Power BI report, because every single thing has to fit in a very, sort of finite space. But in case you thought I forgot, I did not forget that we still have these three areas over here where we're going to put some descriptive text sort of explaining to someone who's reading through this infographic what's happening over here on the right on each section. And I thought that for this portion of the demonstration, it would be really cool if I showed off something that I don't think I've ever done a demo on, and that is the smart narrative visual in Power BI. So let's go ahead and close out this part of the infographic and turn our attention to making three smart narrative visuals that are just going to sort of sum up or summarize the rest of the infographic.